Okay. We're going to call the meeting to order. The Board of Directors of the IU is now called to order. The board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss a personnel and legal matter. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amy, please call the roll.
Brandon Boyer,
Here.
Todd Giddies,
Here.
Jennifer Goldhahn,
Here.
Jay Gray,
Here.
Mark Greenlee,
Here.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
Here.
Sally Kasar,
Here.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
Present.
Amy Milston,
Here.
Ted Sayers,
Here.
Mark Smith,
Here.
Scott Wingard,
Present.
13 present.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any visitors who would like to address the board regarding anything on or off the agenda?
We have not received any public comment.
Okay, thank you. Call on Dr. Trail to introduce tonight's presenter.
So good evening, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Lisa Mangus-Bager, and she serves as the director of the non-public schools within the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. And she has held that position since December 1st of 2015. So she's almost on her 10-year anniversary as in that role. And I just want to highlight a couple of things about Lisa. So within PAIU, we have different job-alike groups, with the non-public schools being one of them. And Lisa held the title of president for all non-public schools across all PAIU for 3 years. Usually that's a 2-year term, but she got lucky to have that role for 3 years. So it really is a significant and demanding responsibility. So I just want to thank Lisa for her commitment and the excellent work that she does in this program. So Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Trail, for that gracious introduction. Dr. Trail is the perfect blend between supportive and I believe in you. So I appreciate her leadership and her supervision of me and the program. Thank you for having me tonight to talk about LIU services in non-public schools. I have a short presentation. I'm happy to take questions during and or after. So just chime in, whether you're online or here in the room, if you have questions. So we're going to start with just like zooming out rather than looking at LIU, zooming out and looking at some Pennsylvania statistics related to private versus public school education. If you look at that first column there, you can see, a big difference between the numbers of students that we're talking about. The second column looks at numbers of teachers, and then the third column is numbers of schools in Pennsylvania. So that number gets very close by comparison to the first column. Typically, private versus public, there's about, it varies from year to year, but 15 to 20% of the population are private school attendees. The numbers of schools are closer because we do have some very small schools. We have a school with 3 students and some with 5, 6, 7 students. So that's why you see, I'm not aware of any district with 5 students. So that's why we see the numbers getting a little closer together with numbers of schools there. Those are from the National Center on Education Statistics. I'm not sure why they took 2022 and 2021 and juxtaposed them together, but at least it gives us a look at the numbers by comparison. So this slide is in this presentation a few different times. We're going to build on it each time with an amount of detail that's there. But first I want to look at, I'll have you note the headings on each of the columns there: state, federal, and federal IDEA. And it's really to help you look at the origins of the funding for services in non-public schools. The bulk of the funding for IU-12 comes from Act 89, these auxiliary services for non-public schools. And so that's what we'll focus on here initially, but we'll build on the rest of that as we go through the presentation. There are 3 types of private schools in Pennsylvania. They're listed here. We serve students in each of these categories. Licensed private academic schools, those schools are certified by the State Board of Private Academic Schools. They're primarily sectarian, but not necessarily. It can be a religious school. Non-public, non-licensed schools are almost exclusively bona fide religious institutions. And then accredited schools, I would say this is the majority of the schools that we serve are accredited schools. They are a mixture of both religious and sectarian schools. They're approved by some kind of accrediting organization other than the State Board of Education. I'm going to step back and give you a little history of Act 89. I started my career in education as a history teacher. It's my first love, so I couldn't avoid including this information for you. Initially, when Act 89 came on the scene in Pennsylvania, we had a state system of education in Pennsylvania that was based on 67 county superintendents. In 1970, that switched over. Intermediate units were introduced in the state. And shortly thereafter, Act 89 came into existence. This was the services for non-public schools. And this is where we initially held services, not in those schools, but in private homes. So teachers would walk across the street with students or walk down the alley, walk down the street. In some cases, drove the students to another location for instruction. Very generous people that were offering their homes for these services, but you can see why maybe there are some concerns associated with that. Here's some pictures of some of the classrooms inside those homes. We have a living room here in the bottom left with a table set up, and then a basement on the right. You can see the heating systems and extension cords and pipes. You know, if Eric Sands was here, our security, well, your security person, Kendra, they might just, shudder over some of this, but it's where we were able to provide instruction, and our teachers, to their credit, made it work. We also had mobile units of various types. The campers probably give me the most shudder looking back. That picture in the middle there is looking out through the front of the camper. You can see the study carrels on the left and the table on the right. The picture to the far right, if it weren't for the ABC banner at the top, it might just look like Jared's camper, where, he goes to long weekends. The one in the top left, there were 2 very similar units like that owned by our program here at the IU when I took over. And I will tell you, there were no tears shed. We got rid of those mobile units, maybe tears of joy, but no tears shed. It was a relief to get rid of those. I mean, obviously it's a safety issue. More importantly, it's loss of instructional time to take students from the school to a different location to be providing the instruction. So we're very grateful to actually be able to be in schools. This wasn't necessarily the fault of the non-public schools. I mean, they didn't necessarily have space initially. And there were some restrictions between us as an IU and public school employees providing service in a religious school, for example, where there might be religious symbols in the classroom, so to speak. So there was a reason for it. Still looking at Act 89 at the state level. This is a state allocation on an annual basis. So the dollar amount there and number of students you see is for the numbers for 24, 25. So $100,821,000 was a state budget allocated for Act 89. It's pretty simple math. They take that dollar amount and divide it by the number of students to come up with a per pupil amount to determine allocations for the state and for each intermediate unit. The services are based on needs of the schools. So we consult with the principals in each of the schools and determine from the list of allowable services, what the services will be that are actually provided in each of the schools. Okay, so back to this slide. Now we're looking a little more specifically at IU 12. You can see that it's about $3.4 million is our allocation for this year for Act 89 services for 6,656 students. So that is, again, simple math to determine the per pupil. Would anyone like to venture a guess at the per pupil amount in 1974 when Act 89 started? I have no prizes. It's just bragging rights. You get it right. What was that? 4,000? Not 4,000? It was $45. So, I mean, you can hardly take a family out for dinner at that price these days. And that was a dollar amount to educate a child for the year with Act 89 services. The per pupil dollar amount right now is it's around $518. It might be $524, but I'm in the neighborhood there, $518 to $524 as the per pupil amount right now. So we're not talking about a ton of money. And that does not translate into services 5 days a week in many of our schools. They would love us there 5 days a week, but we're limited by the funding. We're very thankful that the state of Pennsylvania does have this money set aside. Not all states do. So this is unique to Pennsylvania. Okay, here's another look at some more numbers. We have 107 non-public schools in the IU 12 footprint. We do not provide services in all those schools. Schools opt in for services. Largely the services that we are providing in schools are very well received. But we do have schools that are hands-off when it comes to public education, and that's their prerogative. The numbers and percentages on the right are kind of a comparison of proportionally the numbers of schools that we're in, numbers of students in those schools that would have access to our services. We currently have 34 Act 89 staff members broken out into these categories. As I mentioned, we do have consultation with the schools to determine what the services are that they would like in their school. Largely reading, speech language, pathologists, school counseling, and math are the top 4 asks of those schools. There are other services available, but the funding is limited, as you can imagine, based on some of the dollar amounts that I've shared with you. And so once they get to reading, speech, counseling, there might not be any money left for the other services that ideally they would like. So this is just a breakdown of our staff currently. You can see there are some contracted services we're dealing with some staffing shortages and have had to contract out for some of the services. We try not to do that. We pride ourselves on a very personal relationship with the schools. And so virtual speech, for example, while our speech language pathologist that we're working with is fantastic, it's just not ideal. We'd rather have that in-person therapy. It's easy to look at all of this in terms of Act 89 as money in, the IU services out. But I encourage you to consider the ancillary benefits to these services that we're providing. The schools are extremely grateful for the services that we offer. They really do view the staff that we have coming into their schools as experts in their fields. They depend on us, they trust us, and they rely on us in many ways. Even in the schools that we may not be providing direct services, I regularly get emails that say, hey, Lisa, can you help me with this? It might not be related to reading, counseling, or speech, but we try to help them as best we can. And that might translate into a referral to ed services or referral to ed tech and result in some kind of contracted professional development. So we try to help the schools in all aspects of their needs. We'll talk about the third bullet there a little bit more in the next slide with Title I, but I wanted to highlight it here because we do have strong relationships with school districts, those represented here. Your federal programs representatives I work closely with. You have, as a district, responsibilities for the title programs that you offer in your districts. Typically, there is a non-public equitable share. And so in many cases, we contract with districts to take care of that non-public equitable share for you. And for example, districts that are being monitored, we will gather as much of the documentation as we can so that districts can upload that as part of their monitoring evidence. We're currently in the midst of doing non-public school visits that are a combination of me, our reading specialist, school district representatives, and the non-public school administrator. So we have, I think, around 19 visits planned this month. We had one today, and through the next, first couple of weeks of March, so that we can complete all of those visits. The IU is technically a third-party provider when it comes to Title I. So districts choose to contract with the IU or not for Title I services. And it's my goal every year that there's no reason why they wouldn't continue to contract with us. We want them to be happy with our services. We work hard at that. There's a complaint process. I'm not aware of any complaints that have been submitted, and our goal is that that it wouldn't get to that, that we would be able to settle any kinds of difficulties before it would get to that kind of a situation. So I've added here on this slide to the second column there. This is federal funding now that we're talking about. I started to talk about Title I. You can see there we contract with 27 public school districts for the dollar amount that's totaled there. If you're up on your IU-12 details, you know there are 25 districts in IU-12, 27 are represented here. Title I money follows a student wherever they go. So we do have a couple of school districts that are outside the IU footprint, but they have students that travel inside of IU-12 to non-public schools. So the school visit that we did today was actually with Shippensburg School District. So that's an example here. And at that school, there were are 70 Shippensburg School District students that attend that non-public school in our IU-12 footprint. So we also assist districts with Title IIA, which is professional development funding. It looks a little bit different in non-public schools than it does for your districts. For example, you can use that for class size reduction. Non-public schools exclusively need to use that for professional development. Title III is Jackie Deerdorf, our LIEP program here at the IU. Title IV is a program, again, that we will administer for districts if they would like us to. You can see that the dollar amount there isn't as high, so a lot of our districts do just take care of that on their own, or they have rolled that funding into Title I or Title IV, which is allowable. I included EANS there as a source of federal funding. There's not money continuing to flow right now related to EANS because that was basically part of COVID relief funding. It's emergency assistance for non-public schools. So it's the non-public version of ESSER funding. That ESSER terminology may be more familiar to the public school districts. The first round of that funding did come to the public schools, and then the 2 ensuing rounds came as EANS funding through the IUs. So the first round here at IU 12, we had 16 schools participating for a total of $5 million. The second round was 10 schools, again at $5 million. So again, while that money isn't flowing anymore, we're still tracking inventory and taking in broken, unused, not needed equipment that had been purchased with this funding. Some additional responsibilities that I've held, just to highlight here, Dr. Trail already talked about my PAIU non-public leadership. I was vice president for 2 years, president for 3 years through COVID, which was an accomplishment in itself. And I'm currently in the 2nd year of serving in the past president role. We pride ourselves, sorry, Laura, Jen, on being the best job-alike group of the PAIU groups. I'm also in the 2nd year. I was asked by our regional coordinator for PDE to serve on the Title I Committee of Practitioners. So I am doing that. We have a non-public leadership conference planning committee. That conference is coming up the first week of April. It's our first attempt at organizing this conference. So fingers crossed, by then all the I's will be dotted and T's will be crossed. I can let you know after the first week of April. But that is well underway with planning. And then within the non-public job-alike group, we have subcommittees. I serve in the Act 89 subcommittee, and I've highlighted some of these other themes and et cetera that have been part of our responsibilities for the past few years. So I will be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Any questions for? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I have some brochures here that give a little.
Thanks, Lisa, for your presentation tonight. It's so I've been doing rounds with different administrators here in the IU, and I had an opportunity to meet with Lisa maybe 2 weeks ago, I guess it's been. And I had taught in a non-public school a long time ago. So we had something in common in terms of what she does and what I experienced as a teacher at one point in time in a past life. So it's a big job. Thank you for everything that you do in terms of serving and representing the intermediate unit in the non-public schools in our footprint. So thank you for coming out tonight and sharing. And we're going to hope to at future board meetings is to highlight different divisions so that you can understand more of the scope and sequence, because we're more than just a professional learning institution or an institution that's supporting special education students. There's a lot of different things that we do as an intermediate unit, and we want to educate you through these presentations at the board level. So thank you for coming tonight.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
We'll continue on. The minutes of the January 7th meeting are attached to the agenda for this meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? No, if there are no corrections or additions, the minutes stand approved as distributed. Next, we have our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve routine operational matters contained in the consent agenda?
So moved.
Ted will second.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Ted. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, we'll take the roll call vote, please.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer,
Yes.
Jennifer Goldhahn,
Yes.
Jay Gray,
Yes.
Mark Greenlee,
Yes.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
Yes.
Sally Kasar,
Yes.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
Yes.
Amy Milston,
Yes.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Todd Geddes,
Yes,
13 in favor.
motion carries.
Just before we move on to the next section, I just want to acknowledge Rebecca Gibney, who's in the audience with us this evening. She was just approved as the Director of Educational Services for LIU. I want to welcome her to our organization. She comes to us from Blast IU 17, and we look forward to her leading our Ed Services division. So welcome. Congratulations.
Next, we'll move to our action items. All PDE online grant application systems allow for electronic signature approval when submitting applications for federal and state grants. Attached is a resolution assigning electronic signature authority to Dr. Marchese. Is there a motion to approve the resolution assigning electronic signature authority to Dr. Marchese?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Amy and Sally. Any discussions on that? Questions? Please call the roll.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer. Okay. Jennifer Goldhahn,
Yes.
Jay Gray,
Yes.
Mark Greenlee,
Yes.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
Yes.
Sally Kasar,
Yes.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
Yes.
Amy Milston,
Yes.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Todd Geddes,
Yes,
12 in favor.
motion carries. Next, we have a bid award for internet service for the Lincoln Learning Network 5.0 Regional Wide Area Network Consortium. Turn to Jared Maynard.
All right, good evening, everyone. You may remember back in November, I came to you to discuss the approval of the dissolution agreement of the PAIU net. That is part of our internet service provider that we were using as our regional wide area network that serves the 24 school districts and several other entities, total of 29 entities for the internet services that we provide. At that time, I had shared that we would then need to, with that dissolution, which it actually will occur on June 30th of this calendar year, I would need to go to bid to be able to get our own provider for that service. That provider is actually the same provider we were utilizing through the contract with the PAIU net. They came in with a bid that was favorable to us, and so this is a motion to approve that, and that will result in no additional cost to any of your members, will exist under the same contract agreement, which is also coterminous with your LLN RWAN agreement with us. Take out first. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the contract?
Mark Greenlee, so moved.
Thank you, Mark.
Ted will second.
Thank you, Ted. Any further discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer, none? Jennifer Goldhahn,
Yes.
Jay Gray,
Yes.
Mark Greenlee,
Oh,
Stephanie, Stephanie Harbaugh,
Yes.
Sally Kasar,
Yes.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
yes,
Amy Millston,
Yes.
Todd Geddes.
Yes.
12 in favor.
Motion carries. Next, we have the Erbacher Consulting Associates Letter of Agreement that was tabled during the January 7th board meeting. Is there a motion to remove the Erbacher Consulting Associate Letter of Agreement from the table?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Sally. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Amy. It's been moved in second. All this is doing is taking it off the table, onto the table, and we'll have a separate motion, as you can see following. Any other questions about what we're doing? Please call the roll.
Amy Millston,
Yes.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer, Jennifer Goldhahn,
Yes.
Jay Gray,
No.
Mark Greenlee,
Yes.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
Yes.
Sally Kasar,
Yes.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
yes,
Todd Geddes.
Yes.
11 yes, 1 no.
Motion carries. At this time, I'll call on Dr. Lees to review the Erbacher Consulting Associate Letter of Agreement, as you call.
I'll do it. I can do it.
Or Dr. Marchese can do it.
Okay.
We'll just answer a few questions that the board had from last time.
Yes.
Dr. Marchese.
Thank you. So after the January board meeting where this motion was tabled, the administrative team went back to the consultant. I prepared a confidential memo for the board outlining conversations that we had with the provider. I also provided a courtesy copy. I know that there were some conversations at the January meeting regarding perhaps the perspective of the trainer and how that perspective may be incorporated into the presentation. We have verified with the trainer that the concerns raised by board members at the January meeting are not a component of this presentation. And I think that that's verified by the slide deck that was provided to you in the confidential memo. So at this point in time, it would be the recommendation of the administration to move forward with this. It's $1,500. It's funded through our systems of supports grants that I outlined in the confidential memo. The presentation is being held specifically on April 2nd. The target audience is for educational specialists, which include guidance counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, anybody that works in the mental health arena in terms of providing support and strategies for students who may present with suicidal ideations, and right now is kind of an epidemic in our schools. So as noted, we've had some tragedies across our footprint with students in this arena, and the better off that we are in terms of providing education to those service providers who have direct contact with students to give them a perspective in terms of supporting kids that might be presenting with suicide ideation. That's the intent of this presentation. So we believe strongly that the concerns raised in January are not to be of concern as represented in the conversations that we had with the provider, as well as the presentation preview that we provided. This also one other note: the provider is a recommended provider under the grant. So this individual has been vetted by an outside agency to provide this level of services. So our recommendation is to approve it as seen this evening in the agenda.
Any questions for Dr. Marchese about this?
I have a question. So what's the total cost? I thought it was $10,000 or something.
That was a different contract that the board did approve last month. That was a separate contract I believe that was on trauma-informed supports, and that was for a target audience of, I believe, over 100 individuals. That agreement was, we went back to the provider just to verify, as directed by the board that night, and everything checked out, and the solicitor approved that. So that program is moving forward. That's scheduled in March. This is for suicide prevention.
Yeah, total of $1,500, correct?
To that point,
$1,500.
was it determined whether it was a 2-hour training or a full day
It
training?
is a full day training. The provider that for that particular motion, that segment of the program is 2 hours. So it is a 2-hour for that particular provider, but the entire program is a full day program.
So the $10,000 is just for the 2-hour
It
virtual
is.
training?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the Erbacher Consulting Associates Letter of Agreement for
Ted.
$1,500?
Ted, so moved.
Thank you, Ted. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Amy? Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, I have a question. I appreciate going back and getting more information. However, I don't think the concerns were addressed. And if you look at the slide deck, I appreciate sending it over. But slides 16, 17, 19, 20, 22, 23, 25, 28, 34 all have incidences of race. One particular slide highlighting Black students, and the accompanying graph showed that Black students committing suicide was like the 4th highest group. So I don't really think the slide deck addressed our concerns. And it's kind of disappointing that this person is approved and we're still trying to push this down the throats of the people when we had concerns against this. And they went back and I guess didn't review the slide deck, but it still includes things that we did not want in there. I know what I look like. I see myself in the mirror. But when it comes to a child, I don't care what color that child is, if it's committing suicide, we really do not need to discuss color or race in that. White, Indian, Native American, Asian, whatever. The whole child is more important than what that child looks like. And I'm still very disappointed that we are still going down this road. And that's why I didn't want to take it off the table. And my vote will be no for this as well.
Hey, Jake, could you just repeat the slides that I just pulled mine up, so.
16, 17, 19, 20, 22, 23, 25, 28, 34. And, if you do some digger deeping, there was a podcast this lady was on where she talked about having to apologize for her white privilege. So these are not things that we should be introducing into a public school when we're talking about children's suicide.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Any other questions or comments?
Is there a way that we can see each one of the slides that you can see? I mean, I believe, Jay, that what he's saying, I couldn't really see the slides that well when I took a quick look.
Are we able to pull those up on the overhead?
They're held in a confidential memo to the board because they're board pre.
I don't think we really can pull them up now. They accompany the confidential memo that Dr. Marchese sent out.
And the slides that Jay's speaking about, I believe that they're data slides from the Centers for Disease Control. To your point, they're broken down by different ethnic backgrounds.
And not only that, the data is so old, and we're sitting in 2025 and we're using data from 2015. So, it's a lot of misconceptions and things I see wrong with this whole training as a whole. And just like I said, I just don't really feel that our concerns were addressed.
So some of the slides, some of the slide data is the 2021, 2022, specifically slide 19. So some of that, I believe, is just trailing data as it was reported from the agencies. I can tell you that the team did speak specifically with the provider and express concerns that were addressed previously and the concerns that you're raising tonight. And we've made it clear that, we're not looking for any bias in terms of how things are presented. I mean, some of this is it's straight line data, and the intent is not designed to to put any specific race or ethnic group in a particular situation.
Whenever we had the conversation about the virtual training last time, I thought, okay, well, it was just a misunderstanding because it was presented as a full day training with the optic to me that the $10,000 for this was for the entire day. Only when I dug down deeper into it did I then learn that the $10,000 was for the 2-hour virtual training. So I was like, okay, things happen, fine, whatever. When I was looking at the slide presentation, specifically, I believe slide 22, knowing the concerns that everyone else voiced, and I actually came in last time and I said, hey, could we see the slide presentation? Try to find a compromise, because I think that's the only way we all move forward. So I was very hopeful that we were going to look at this and it was going to be about suicide prevention. It's something very near and dear to me as someone who attempted that in my early 20s. So I understand that maybe on a deeper level than many other people can. So I find myself in the position as I'm going through looking at slide 22, where it shows a bar graph of the different races or ethnicities of children from 2020 data. And to the left of that, there is a little paragraph about how from 2001 to 2015, that Black students were twice as likely as white students to commit suicide. And this is a terrible subject, right? And I'm not saying that it's not, but to this point, I was disappointed because that data, that specific typed in paragraph or sentence, was addressing data from 2001 and 2015. When the bar graph directly next to it is from 2020, and it shows that Black students are at like 8.9%, and don't hold me to these numbers. White students are at 9 point something percent.
9.6 and 10.9.
And my heritage at Native American is 19%, which is twice the majority of everyone else. And for those who don't know, Native Americans, 2.5 times more likely than the national average from 10 to 24 to commit suicide. So I get a little uncomfortable when we say we're not going to do something, but if we're going to do something and we're going to elevate something in that way, we need to look at the most current data. And in that situation, we need to be talking about Native Americans if we're going to do it based on the data. And that's where I'm at. I was very disappointed when I saw that slide particularly, because it felt like, and right, wrong, or indifferent, with what had happened with the $10,000 2-hour virtual training, coupled with now this slide is sliding in there. Now I feel like someone's trying to put something over on me because they think I'm not going to look at stuff. And I don't believe that was the intention. But now I have my radar up, like, what are we doing here? There were specific concerns that were addressed, not by me, but by others on this board. And right there sits one slide that specifically is everything that they talked about that they didn't want in there. And all you got to do is remove that slide and we're not having this conversation. And the bigger thing, and I will get on a tiny soapbox here and then I promise I won't say another thing, is it's really crappy for me to sit here and now be conflicted. And you can talk to family members, you can talk to other people in this room, how conflicted I have been about this whole thing since I saw that freaking slide presentation. Because the greater good is getting these students the help that they need and preparing people to be aware of what it's like to see someone and see these signs. And I'm sitting here maybe not even voting for it because someone has hijacked something that should be so non-controversial with their own personal stuff. And that is so frustrating. And I don't believe that we would look through any of the other people and other persons and find anything different, because that's the culture we live in. Because everything has been so hijacked by everybody wanting their little piece of this, that, and the other thing. And it's a testament to the terrible state that we're in, where we couldn't even have a non-controversial subject as how can we help kids not commit suicide, because people are trying to put other stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there. And so I'm here conflicted still in this very moment, not knowing what I'm going to vote when we do it in 10 minutes. And this is a crappy place to be for outside agencies to come in and put this on me. And maybe I'm overthinking it and maybe I should just do it because I understand what the greater good is. But it's just crappy and I would not do my self-service and I wouldn't be able to live with myself having the personal experience that I do, not standing on this soapbox and saying, I really I have such disgust for where we are right now. That everything has all of this extra crap and it can't just be, this is what it is, this is the benefit, and here we are. And I apologize if that gets anybody feeling some type of way, but I stand on it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think, you share the opinion of several others here. And
I would just like to make a comment. This is Cassandra Liggins. I think it is important. Jay did mention we should be treating the whole child. I work in healthcare and we see children, all ages, all races, gender, religion. And I think we're forgetting about the person. When you work in healthcare, you look at things from a different perspective because when I walk into the hospital to do my job, I see a sick person. I don't see a green person. I don't see a white person. I don't see a Black person. I see an individual who's coming to us who is sick and need help. And it is conflicting because after Jay gave additional information, I did some research, but I didn't know about the podcast. I wish I had listened to that before we came on the meeting. It could have probably gave me more clarity, but it is very disappointing. Again, as my great-grandfather was Indian, now I don't know if we have any suicide in my family, but it's concerning. The suicide rate is high amongst young people. And when you look at your LBTG community and how society treat them, we are leaving another sector out. So when we're talking about the whole child, we need to talk about the whole child, regardless of their race, gender, sex, religion.
I agree with Cassandra.
can you put your mic down? Sorry.
Would like to agree with Cassandra, Stephanie, and Jay in that we need to stop focusing on race, ethnicity, color, sexual orientation. None of it matters. When you have someone in front of you who is suffering, none of it matters. The person matters. For the past couple years, we've been so focused on breaking people into categories and dividing us. When it comes down to it, it doesn't matter. When you have someone suffering, you treat them as a person, regardless of race, gender identity, heritage. It doesn't matter. And I don't appreciate that this stuff here has become a forefront in society, in education. And Jay, thank you for pointing out the things that you did. I voted yes to take this off the table so we can address it and put it to bed because we can't continually table it. But to constantly see a child in front of you as anything more than a child is wrong. That needs to stop. It needs to stop in education foremost and in society as well. That's all I got to say about that.
And I do need to say this. I'm not going to dismiss the fact that race discrimination is not an issue. That's been an issue in America forever. I don't want to dismiss that because Black people still are not treated fairly in medicine, and I see it. It has happened to me. So I try not to let my feelings get in the way of when I am at work. I want to look at a person because they are sick. I don't want, but I'm going to advocate for myself and my family, and I'm going to advocate for my community. But I think we are moving in a direction in America, and it's been going on for decades, and I think it's getting worse because you have powers to be that woke people up. I've been woke. So I know what it's like to hurt. I know what it's like to feel discriminated against. I know what it's like to have a high degree and not get that job I want. And a lot of things that people deal with in life is because of how they're being treated. And the other layer of that is mental illness. There's no money being pumped into mental illness. I don't hear no one talking about mental illness. What are we going to do for individuals who, and I see this in my field every single day I go to work and step in a hospital when I'm scheduled to work. There's no empathy, there's no compassion. And I think race is going to always be at the top of the table to talk about, but it's up to the individual. It's up to you. Are you going to change that? Are you going to be the game changer, the agent? Or are we going to continue to go down this rabbit hole and have these conversations? Because I've been in medicine for 30 plus years, and when I walk into a hospital and do my job, I see a sick person. I can't see past that. But I do understand the reality of we don't always get treated fairly, Black people. I get that. And it's up for me to advocate and be the voice for those who don't speak. But again, this subject here is very sensitive for everyone. And now that we are talking about it, I don't know if I can be in support of it. Because we really need to cater to everyone. We need to cater to every single child and look at them as a whole child.
I'd like
this is Mark. This is Mark. I don't know if you can hear me.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so I've heard comments of people saying that they don't want this to be about race, but we have someone made an objection because there were two slides in the entire presentation that kind of focused on race. So I'm for the whole child too, and I want that's one of the things that when you talk about whole child, that's what that means. That means not just the intelligence of the child, it means also the race of the child and what goes with that, the culture, right? And so you cannot have a conversation about suicide in this country and not talk about the racial disparities, which lead some minorities to suicide, unfortunately. The disparities in healthcare, right? So I think just one slide. Here we go again. Somebody talking about this hijacking the whole issue here, but we're letting a couple of slides uh, prevent people from getting the information they need to help kids. And when you talk about trauma, right? And that's one of the things that most educators are having to kind of be either re-educated on or get the initial training. It's a trauma, and some of the things that kids bring to school with them are not just poverty. Some of them have to do with race, right? Dr. DeGrye wrote a book on post-traumatic slave syndrome, and I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, but you have to understand that it does affect people. And if you look, it's just being informed if you're looking at the statistics around that, right? It's not about trying to um, influence somebody who's probably not going to be influenced anyway by two slides, right? So this is information that needs to go to our providers to kind of help them to support our kids. And I think that this initiative or this action is being hijacked for people injecting race in it because they're picking out two slides to to define the entire presentation. Ludicrous is what I think that is.
I'd like to also add, I feel like people say that the whole child is being
we need to look at the whole child for for reasons other than the actual reason, which is like I was at Mark that just said, there are reasons that certain individuals and certain people in certain categories are more apt for suicide, apt to commit suicide or to have suicidal ideation, such as the LGBTQ community, especially the transgender community, Native Americans, et cetera. I think that what we need to talk about though is kind of just how to solve this. And to solve this is to look at what we're trying to accomplish here. What we're trying to accomplish is to educate people, educate our providers and our teachers and our social workers on how to spot and address suicidal ideation in our children. That is what we're trying to accomplish here. And if it's a matter of how the slide is, can we ask Erbacher to update their data? I think we could probably do that. Ask them to update their data with new data. Ask them to, I think it's very fair to list, if it's Native Americans that are most likely to commit suicide, I think there's nothing wrong with saying that because it's knowledge. It's important to understand. I have a transgender son. Okay. He is not suicidal, but lots of his friends are. That's important to me. And it's important for his teachers and the teachers of his friends to know that is something to look for, that in that population, those kids may have a suicidal ideation. So it is important to do that. It is important to recognize the differences of children in order to educate people that are dealing with those children. And so in general, I would say, let's not look at, of course, you walk into a hospital, doesn't matter what the person looks like, you care for that person. I absolutely agree with I'm sorry, that I don't know, Cassandra, is it? I'm sorry. Absolutely 100% agree, but we cannot go back and forth and round and round and round about this training when the essence of the training is let's train our people. Now, is Erbacher the absolute right organization? Maybe it isn't to a lot of people in this room, but I think that that's not the point here. I think we can ask them to update their data. I think we can change out those slides. And I think the most important thing is for our people to get the education and understand what it is that we should be, what they should be looking for in our students to prevent any suicide. And so that we don't have a single other situation in our group or in any of the groups that we serve of suicide. And I think that's the bottom line, not any of this other stuff. Thank you.
Amy, I just want to address one of the things. Dr. Marchese, they did adjust the slide deck? Did we have a conversation and then they adjusted the slide deck already?
There were slides that were adjusted, that we asked specifically that we found ran afoul to kind of what it didn't have a place in the presentation. And these were, I appreciate the perspectives that were shared tonight. I think our team viewed them as straight data slides. They weren't interpreted as where we were calling out specific races in a negative way. I think to your points, the points that were raised tonight, I think the intent of the presentation really is to address the whole child. I mean, and the whole child around the topic of suicide prevention. And remember that the target audience are the frontline people, the people that when a student is in crisis, these are the people that they're going to talk to. They're going to talk to guidance counselors and social workers and the psychologist and good, bad, or indifferent. And whether some of these stats might be a few years old, there are statistics. And I think that, I think the intent of the presenter is to at least build awareness and provide awareness to the groups that we don't want to be looking at kids for the color of their skin or the gender that they are, but we want to be also recognizing the fact that population that may present with different crisis situations, and it's really about bringing awareness to those frontline providers. So that's kind of our perspective on it.
Just one other thing I wanted to mention was that, when you focus on certain groups, you're also doing a disservice to the groups you're not focusing on. It's not just LGBTQ children who are killing themselves. There are plenty of other children who are suffering as well. So when you focus on one, you're not focusing on others. And while we're on the topic of suicide, one of the highest rates is our military veterans. They get left out of this conversation, although it's not applicable to education, but
Is anybody else that we haven't? I want to give everyone a chance. Anyone else we haven't heard from? Out there. I guess I will say this comes down to a baby bathwater situation. I think the suicide, it's a topic that needs to be addressed. And I think it is a little concerning to me that after we asked the slide decks to be edited, that it appears to me that some of the verbiage, even within the slide decks, don't match the data that sits right next in the slide before, slide after. So that gives me pause. I am not sure that at this point that Erbacher, certainly there are other providers that can address this. I do think it should be a priority for us to make suicide awareness for our staff. And if it's not this provider, I would encourage, if this vote doesn't pass, I would encourage the team to seek someone else. Hopefully that can address that important issue without some of the muddy issues, the side issues that really shouldn't be part of this conversation. The characteristics I'm okay with of what teenage suicide is, but it does appear that there seems to be a little forcing of issues.
Are there other providers that, who would I ask this question to? Dr. Lease, Miss? Okay. Are there other providers that you would be able to address in time to still have your April meeting? Or if this does not pass tonight, does that mean the program then is gone for good?
We do have an internal trainer. Dr. Laura Sharp has provided suicide trainings in the past. And so she, as our supervisor of pupil personnel services, would be the one providing the service without any external presenter.
And do you think that that would be less of a presentation than the one that you're getting? I don't want to put you on the spot, or comparable. Or you can't speak to it because you don't know what the presentation would be, which is also a fine answer.
I don't have access to the presentation. They are different levels of consultants. Terry Erbacher is known for the practical guide that a lot of the practitioners utilize. And so that is why that was an opportunity for the grant funding this year that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily have had.
Okay, so in the spirit of my earlier comment about compromise, if you can just put the bar graph on slide 22 without the words next to it.
I'm going to say this. I don't think it's not our responsibility to start diving down into and saying this and that.
Okay.
I think you take it on the whole, or you take it as presented. It is not the board's. We're not landing the plane and getting out.
Okay.
If you don't like this, I think ours is an up or down. We really, that exceeds our role as the board. If we don't like it, please vote no.
Okay.
If you like it, vote yes.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, I think that's beyond the scope of us.
I will say that to your point, I will say if it affirmatively passes tonight, I don't have a problem as an administration going back to the provider and sharing the additional conversation tonight for that final presentation. So
I think we've had plenty of discussion on this. It's been seconded. If there's no other objections, I'm going to ask to have call the vote, please.
Cassandra Liggins,
Yes.
Amy Milston,
yes.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer,
No.
Jennifer Goldhahn,
No.
Jay Gray,
No.
Mark Greenlee,
No.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
No.
Sally Kasar,
No.
Sarah Kiefer. I'm sorry. Todd Geddes.
No.
7 no, and 6 yes.
Motion is defeated. And I would encourage the team, I think you've heard us that suicide prevention is something that's a priority, and continue to find a different provider. Thank you. Next, we have board policies for first reading. There are two board policies attached to the agenda for first reading, 234 and 251. Does anybody have any questions regarding these policies? Is there a motion to approve the first reading of board policy listed on the agenda, 234 and 251?
So moved.
Thank you, Jen. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Sally. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
Yes.
Amy Milston,
Yes.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer,
Yes.
Jennifer Goldhahn,
Yes.
Jay Gray,
Yes.
Mark Greenlee,
Yes.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
Yes.
Sally Kasar,
Yes.
Todd Geddes,
Yes.
13 in favor.
Okay, next, we have four policies attached for their second reading and adoption. We would like to point your attention to policy number 308. And deals with employee contract and board resolution. The following is attached, and we are looking to strike this paragraph from that policy. And I'll read what we're going to strike. The executive director may submit their resignation to the board president. The board shall take official action on acceptance of the resignation in accordance with the terms specified in the executive director's written contract. The executive director's resignation shall be irrevocable once accepted by action of the board. We're looking to strike that because the executive director, that is defined in their contract. So it is not necessary. So we are going to strike that from this policy. And I thank Jen Goldham for bringing that to our attention. Are there any questions with that change? Again, that will be stricken from the policy 308. And again, that is to be more consistent. Anything with the executive director, they do have a contract. And just for our own edification, Dr. McKaysey, who on staff has individual contracts versus covered by?
Myself, Dr. Trail, Mr. Kessler, Ms. Williams.
So those four individuals here have individual contracts. So any of these things are addressed in those contracts. And if they're not, they defer to policy. Okay. Any questions about what we just did there? Again, thank you, Jen, for pointing out being consistent. Do we have a motion for policies 218.1, 222, 308 as amended, and 823?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have a second?
Ted will second.
Thank you, Ted. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Sally Kasar,
Yes.
Sarah Kiefer, Cassandra Liggins,
Yes.
Amy Milston,
Yes.
Ted Sayers,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Scott Wingard,
Yes, ma'am.
Brandon Boyer,
Yes.
Jennifer Goldhahn,
Yes.
Jay Gray,
Yes.
Mark Greenlee,
Yes.
Stephanie Harbaugh,
Yes.
Todd Geddes,
Yes.
13 in favor.
Thank you. Are there any visitors attending that wish to address the board with any items on or off the agenda?
We have not any comment.
Someday. Three quick things with it. That's true. The first thing is our financial interest statements. Make sure you fill those out. You do have to turn one into the IU. even though your term went into your local district, and that's due by May 1st. So if you can turn that in. Also, I'll turn your attention to, we got an email, if you didn't get a chance to look at the LIU cybersecurity news and media coverage, great story. I've got some nice coverage there. And do we have we were going to get some press coverage for the York Learning Center. I know that event got canceled. We didn't get a reschedule yet.
It has not been rescheduled yet.
So look for that as well. We got a grant and they're looking for some coverage there. And the last item to bring to your attention is we have a retreat date of April 16th. I appreciate all of you responding to that and look forward to your participation in that as we move forward with the next chapter and Dr. Marchese's leadership and the contributions of our cabinet. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Marchese.
Thank you, Mr. Geddes. Just for my report for this month, I have it broken down by a few different activities. The first one I'll mention is my transition activities. So I've been engaged in a lot of listening and learning sessions right now with a variety of stakeholders. I have met with 4 of the 6 superintendents in Adams County. I've met with all 5 superintendents from Franklin County, and then over the next few weeks, I'll be meeting individually with superintendents from York County. To date, I have met with 3 of our board members, looking forward to my upcoming meetings with other members of the IU board, as well as I've been conducting individual meetings with members of the leadership team here at Lincoln Intermediate Unit. I also have 2 visits to address the faculty and staff at the learning centers. And I've really enjoyed just interacting with a variety of stakeholders here internally and externally. Amy's done a great job managing my calendar. It's filled up every single day, but the conversations have been really phenomenal and have helped me in terms of my own onboarding into the organization. The cabinet team has been phenomenal also, as well as providing background and insight as I kind of pick away at different things and kind of learn the ropes here. So I appreciate all their support. Just a couple updates. We did have our authority meeting for the Franklin Learning Center back in January. Just for the board's understanding, there's a decommissioned pool at the Franklin Learning Center that's been up under debate for a while. We discussed that with the authority board, and we're not going to move forward with full renovations of that pool area. We're actually going to look to change that space into additional classroom spaces so that we can expand programs for students in Franklin County. The pool has not been used for the last 5 years. For any student that requires any aquatics therapy, we would look to probably enter into an agreement with the Chambersburg Y to provide those services. We did have a great meeting this morning with the superintendents from Franklin County. There'll be some additional conversations with special education leads in each of the districts later this month. And then we will be working directly with the authority and the superintendents in terms of kind of what we're going to be looking to do in terms of increased programs over at the Learning Center. As Todd mentioned, our board retreat is scheduled for Wednesday night, April 16th. We're looking to utilize our time together as an opportunity for team building, establishing communication norms, and learning more about the differences between the role of a school director and an intermediate unit board member. It's an opportunity for us to basically establish our operating guidelines and look forward to working with all of you during my tenure here as an executive director of the Lincoln Intermediate Unit, and look forward to kind of building that strategy together as a board and administration. We will have an outside facilitator who will be working with us that has provided those kinds of services in the past to school districts in terms of supporting the administration and the boards in terms of setting norms, et cetera. So all details on there will be shared with the board at a future date, but we have locked down the date for April 16th, and we'll look forward to really planning that out. Last Friday, I communicated to you, we had a little incident over at the Paradise School. And again, I'd just like to acknowledge the administration and the staff for their prompt response last Friday. They did a great job managing the situation. I'd also like to thank the regional police force and the sheriff's department for their assistance in responding to the concerns and allowing for school operations to resume quickly on Friday. I would also like to take this moment to publicly thank Dr. Laura McCusker for serving as our interim Director of Educational Services, and she'll continue in that role until Rebecca joins us in April. It's been nice getting to know Laura on a professional level, and I appreciate everything that she's done in supporting that division and making sure that there's been a seamless transition over the last several months. So I just wanted to publicly thank you, Laura, for that service to the intermediate unit. And then last but not least, there's a little gift at your table. As you know, last month we celebrated School Director Recognition Month. And because we had to switch to virtual due to the weather, we had to postpone giving you your gifts. But I think our students put some of these gifts together for all of you, and it's a small token of our appreciation for the dedication and the time that you put in, and not only supporting the work at your local school districts, but also here at the intermediate unit. And I don't know, Dr. Lisa, if you want to take a minute to highlight what the kids put together.
Sure. Certainly, I think Ted is opening his over there. We were worried that as we got into February here that you might not be able to use these, but our students are partnering with a community partner actually in Hanover, Prestige Apparel, a nice little family-owned business. They have been a partner with us here at the IU. They've provided some of our staff appreciation bags to some different programs and what have you. But they're working with our transition coordinator, Jesse Timchak, to provide a community outing and resource for our students with complex needs. They're a work site for our students. So the students, they value that partnership, and they were talking to Prestige every year in about October. I say to them, hey guys, what do you think about a board appreciation gift this year? So they happen to be at Prestige. And of course, Prestige does screen printing and all kinds of apparel. And the kids actually selected and thought it would be cool to do scarves. So we have the LIU gray and blue. And the students were proud to create them, and they actually made them with the staff, like they actually were involved in the embroidery and the what have you with our community partner. So we're always excited. And I just wanted to take the opportunity publicly, one, to thank you guys, but really to thank that partner, Prestige Apparel in Hanover. So if you have any screen printing, embroidering, or whatever apparel needs, a little free ad for them. But they're amazing in working with our students, and they've been a great partner with us long before our students' work site. So awesome experience, again, created with lots of love and thanks from our students, even wrapped and packaged and everything for you from them. So thank you for all you do.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. And I'll call on Dr. Trail.
All right, thank you. I just have one item to share with you this evening. I wanted to let you know that Lincoln Intermediate Unit is entering into a pilot project with Oakdale, which is the Office of Child Development and Early Learning, which is under the umbrella of PDE and the Department of Human Services, but also with NCEE, which is the National Center on Education and the Economy. And the pilot project is all around early childhood, specifically for Franklin County. So when I was approached about this potential pilot project, I invited the 5 county superintendents to a Zoom meeting with the NCEE, and they all were overwhelmingly on board with what this pilot project is going to do. So the goal is really to look to create and implement an aligned system of services that responds effectively to the needs of the students or children in Franklin County. So they're going to be looking at what is the status of preschool and childcare? Are there any gaps? Are you speaking the same language? Are they all on the same page as to what a student needs to know by the time they're 5 years old when they enter kindergarten? So it's bringing a ton of, well, I shouldn't say a ton, but a different group of stakeholders together that consist of Mike Ross from the Franklin County Development Corporation. We have Keystone Health there. We have WellSpan. We have the new elected representative for Franklin County, Chad Reichard. He's now going to be joining us. We have the 5 school districts there. We have preschool leaders. We have people from the IU because we run early intervention programs in Franklin County. So trying to bring them all together and again, looking at where the gaps are and, just really going from there. So we have about 8 meetings scheduled to see where we are. And this is only the second time that an IU has been approached in the state to do a pilot project. NCEE and Oakdale worked first with IU3 out in the Pittsburgh area, which is definitely more urban. And then when we looked at Franklin County, Chambersburg may not be rural, but when you look at Tuscarora, when you look at Fannett Meadow, we're definitely dealing with some very rural communities. So it's just very exciting. So I just wanted to let you know about that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dale. Next, we have the cabinet reports.
We'll start with Dr. McCusker.
Oh, that was not me. Thank you. I want to welcome Rebecca Gibney as the new Director of Educational Services. I'd like to thank Dr. Marchese and the Cabinet for making this such a priority to start off the year. Becky and I have worked together previously, and through the statewide network of support, I'm able to speak to her enthusiasm for designing innovative services that meets the needs of our schools and districts. So I'm really excited for that. And I look forward to, under the guidance of Dr. Marchese's office, coordinating calendars and making that as smooth a transition, as possible as she joins us at the IU. On February 12th, Educational Services will be partnering also with HR, as well as partnerships with the U.S. Army War College and Shippensburg Study Council to host a unique design thinking workshop, looking at the operational design thinking in military strategy to really have teams of administrators bring an ill-defined or ill-structured problem of practice that they're currently dealing with, take them through the iterative 4-step process. And we're thrilled to welcome 3 Army War commanders and then military professors to kind of lead that experience. So we're looking forward to that and hope that it brings nice solutions and ideas to our region.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McCusker. Mrs. Williams.
Good evening. So in human resources, we do hold a HR consortium meeting, which we try to do 3 times a year in person. So we held that in January, and this time we decided to try a theme and see how that went with the group. And so we really focused on the growth mindset. I would say it was probably our most successful meeting that we've had yet, to the point they wanted our presenters to come back every single quarter to go over the growth mindset. So really outside of the box thinking that all of the HR teams from the districts were really excited about. So that's something we will definitely have each year, a discussion on that topic, and bring in people, different presenters to go over and keep going over those new ideas to help us in the HR profession think outside the box and work together. We also held a meeting at Capital Area Intermediate Unit along with Business Services. This is the first combined meeting that we have held other than the fall workshop that we do. So it was a 1-day event. So Brent and I traveled to Capital Area, and it was definitely a nice day for both of the teams to get together. Business Services and HR work together very frequently, and we have to work together in harmony because we look at 2 different areas. HR focuses on the people, and business a lot of times on the cost. So that balance is something that's really important. So Brent and I felt that it would be nice to get us together a second time to continue to build on that. So we had a really nice day, and that's something that we plan to do moving forward as long as Brent and I are continuing to lead it. The other piece is our HR hub. We have been working on that for some time. a place for our HR professionals in the districts to go to find items that is more visually appealing. So we just introduced that to the group in January. And then we have been collecting support staff data now for 3 school years. So that was something that we trialed to see how it worked to provide districts with data on support staff pay rates. It is something that we have improved over those 3 years. And at our most recent consortium meeting, we talked about some different pieces that would be beneficial as districts prepare for budgets and negotiation discussions. The hope is that we can expand on that in the future, but it's definitely a tool that both HR professionals and business managers have been using and use more and more often. So we're excited about that and growing that in the future into other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kessler.
Tracy and I like to say, as the lead and chair of the PAIU groups, that our group is the best in the state, as we heard earlier, or as Jared would like to say his group is. So we all compete. Most of us, we are blessed that IU12 is a lot of the leaders of the job elects across the state. So yes, our group is the best. Real quick, just wanted to share 1 or 2 kudos to business office staff. January is probably one of the most busiest months till you get to the W-2s and 1099 process. And while earlier tonight on the agenda, our payroll person had resigned earlier in the month, and we had an internal promotion, and now we're down an accounts payable person. And so that position is posted. But during January, we processed over 1,200 W-2s. So even though we're at about 1,000 employees till people that, worked at some point during 2024. So well over 1,200 W-2s we got out in the middle of January. And then we had over 300 1099. So with all the vendors that we have to report to the IRS for. So staff had those done, and it was a good undertaking. So I just wanted to highlight and thank the business office staff for a good month of January and a lot of our tax reporting and other items. So other than that, all is good.
Thank you, Brent. Dr. Elise.
So the Student Services Special Ed Job Alike Group meets in State College. Maybe the best. I'm excited in our department. I was asked again in representation of PAIU. I am one of 4 across the state that is working with the IUs across the state and the department and the Bureau of Special Ed to shift our special education plan that the IU needs to do, just like your districts need to do that, into the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal, FRCPP. So looking at getting all of the plans in the same place and just making some shifts so that everything is a little bit more streamlined. I was actually participating with some colleagues across the state earlier today about that, and we're super excited to look at that. I'm proud to be selected as one of the representatives and that they honor our input here in IU12, but that is something, just a heads up, we are going to be starting our plan that you should see that in the next 2 months. I know every year we do our special education plan. It's connected to your district needs and what's out there. So Dr. McCusker's department and I are working on what those needs, like learning those needs, hearing from your districts what they need, and then that drives that plan. But that's a super exciting endeavor. I co-chair our state lead as well. So we've got a little bit of a competitive team here, but we're really excited. We're all passionate about what we do. So we're proud to represent and be part of. We all lean in very heavily to our PAIU colleagues. So while we're all a little competitive, we're all pretty awesome at leading that. So my last thing, I always try and share with you, and as you saw in your board notes, the Did You Know? So this month, actually this week right now, February 3rd through the 7th is National School Counselor Appreciation Week. Here at the IU, we are down to almost 7 counselors, I believe we're at. That's one of those groups that they're in such high demand, and there's such a great opportunity for them to work in so many diverse areas. Lots of them don't select to work in a school because they can make a lot more money in the private sector and what have you, but we're super proud of the counselors that we have. Those counselors, again, they'll work from a district-based classroom to our centers. They're doing crisis teams. They're doing small group, large group lessons, and all kinds of amazing things that they do, supporting your districts when there's a crisis, a response team. Our team goes out and supports that as well. So just wanted to shout out to our counselors who are absolutely amazing. And we also have, it's interesting, it's a Saturday this year, but next Saturday, February 15th, is School Resource Officer Appreciation Day. And I wanted to just take a moment and Zellers is our school resource officer at the York Learning Center. He's part of Northern Regional, and he is very much a part of our school community at York Learning Center. So I'll have more about that in my report for you guys closer to the end of the month, but honoring those special people that we have that just make our jobs a little bit easier and help keep us online. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I'll go to Julie online before we go to Jared. I won't forget you this month.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Actually, Jared and I are teaming up for my update, so I'm going to have him share with you the visuals, and I'll walk you through a little bit about what you're seeing. I just wanted to share with the board that we are in the process of migrating over to a new website provider for the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. This was actually not necessarily by choice, although I think we're coming out of it really well. But our previous provider, Blackboard, was acquired by Final Site, which is a website provider you might have heard of. They provide websites for a lot of districts within our footprint. So we've been going through the migration process for a little over a year now, just kind of taking our time and making sure that we had everything ready to go. Wanted to give you a little preview of what the homepage looks like tonight. I also wanted to share that this has really been a project led by two of Jared's staff members, Nicole Brakefield and Autumn Zeminski in Educational Technology Services. Largely responsible for migrating over all of the content, which is a huge undertaking, and then working a lot with our staff to make sure that our individual program and service website editors are comfortable and familiar with how this new site will work. But although we were not looking to do this, we're very excited about it because the new site does offer a much more streamlined design, enhanced search and navigation capabilities, which will be really nice for visitors who are coming to our site to look for various programs and services. You'll also notice on the homepage that we've added a hub link for the Board of Directors site. Just thought I would put that out there tonight. When we're live, I'll have Dr. Marchese share a direct link to that with you so you can browse through that and just see how that site has also been streamlined. It also allows for a little more of a dynamic content integration with sharing news features as well as connecting with our social media networks so that we kind of have fresh content updated regularly to that page that's integrated with our social media networks as well. It features enhanced accessibility tools that will help ensure that we are compliant from that standpoint. And we've been working as a team, sort of going through our content now to make sure that we are making it accessible so that our different audiences are able to engage with it equally. We're also really using it to focus on a recruitment and a job application hub with some different calls to action for potential job applicants in different places throughout the site. You'll notice the photos of our own staff and students, which is a big change that I had been hearing requests for since I joined the IU in 2021. The staff wanted to see our own people and our own students who we're serving featured within our website. So that'll be a nice addition as well as we roll this out. So again, just a little preview tonight, so you know this is coming. I will also say this was not done at an additional budgeted cost at all. It's the same pricing and everything else that was currently budgeted for within our current agreement that Jared's team has in place with our website provider as well. So I can stop there if there's any questions. Otherwise, when it's out and live, which should be Thursday afternoon, we will share an update and make sure you have links to that so you can get in there and take a look for yourselves at what's been done.
Thanks, Julie.
Yep, thank you.
And Jared.
Thanks for mentioning the news broadcast that we were able to get. I think, and Julie was instrumental in being able to connect to really highlight and focus how important cybersecurity is in schools. You know this. One of the things that I think is important for you to hear about that event, we ended up having just over 200 LEAs across the state connect to us. So when you think about the impact of that, almost half of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on top of about 500 individual people that were spread out across all of the partner intermediate units. So when my colleagues talk about the job alike groups, that's the power of the PAIU group. We're able to bring those people together to be able to facilitate that. And born out of that, We are now going to be, I lead the Chief Technology Officer group for PAIU. And so we are actually going to be building training modules for the CIS cybersecurity framework. It's a nationally recognized cybersecurity framework that we'll be able to bring back and replicate in each of our IUs so that we're all able to support, no matter how big or small each IU is. We're taking from the knowledge that a lot of IUs are already doing some of this work in, and compartmentalize that and make it something that's scalable across the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So it's really awesome experience at that state level. But then locally, what was awesome about the event is we did a tabletop exercise, and the company that ran it, they charged $3,000 to $5,000 for this. They did it pro bono, knowing the scope of what it was going to reach. And after that, my tech directors came to me and said, can we design our own mini tabletops that we can take back and do in each of our leadership teams meetings in our own districts, one a month. So we're going to be meeting next month as tech directors that are part of just IU's footprint, to IU12's footprint, to do that. So just really the power of being able to work collaboratively with one another and break down the jurisdiction walls of school districts. These are the types of events that we're trying to really grow here, especially in that arena where we're all kind of navigating kind of uncharted territory. So it was great to be able to have that event.
Thank you, Jared.
I have a question. Were you able to figure out where the bomb scare threat came from for Paradise? Or is that Catholic Charities? Like, wasn't your system?
So that was reported through Safe to Say report, and there's I think in order to determine the IP address, it's got to be subpoenaed. So we did inquire with the police about that. I haven't heard anything back from the police department as to how they were digging, but I don't believe anything. It didn't hit any of our IP addresses here.
No, that's correct. Yeah, we did a proactive search to see if anybody from our devices tried to actually file the report that day, and that was something that wasn't found.
And I'll just speak from personal experience that cybersecurity at a district can be very costly. So it's worth the investment, and I would encourage everybody to take available of our services here at the IU and apply them as best you can to your districts. Thank you. Anything else? Anything for the good of the order from anyone else? I thank everyone for staying. I know we ran a little late tonight, and we are cognizant of the time. So without further ado,
Sorry.
go Ted.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. On that note, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make
A
that
motion.
motion.
Thank you, Ted. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Jen. All in favor, say aye.